The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
So I'll tell everybody about this in a second, but I just looked and we're at like 1.5 million views on that video. So anyway, listen, everybody, we got a viral superstar today. If you guys have followed the Deep Shallow Dive Instagram page, you may have seen this video from Caleb Dix. It's under Clyde. He goes by Clyde on his IG. And it was a video of him driving around from a recent trip where he went to the West Bank in Israel, Palestine. And so we're going to get into all that. But man, this video was crazy because it showed a unbelievable wall. And again, we're talking about the West Bank now. We're not talking about Gaza. So we're talking about the area that there's not supposed to be any war. And we will get into all that in a minute. But hey, welcome, brother. I appreciate you joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
No problem. All right, listen, Caleb is another guy that, honestly, it's like you're a little bit of a hybrid in terms of recent people that I've brought on the podcast. And you are a combination of, Christianity, Christian people. Like I've brought Jay Slay USA, this guy, Jeremy Sladen. I just did an episode with a guy named Paul Davis, who was super interesting. And then at the same token, you've been in the military. And so I've done episodes with Josephine Gilbo. I've done episodes with Alan Shabaro, folks that were in the military and that served and obviously now have, real different views on kind of what's going on in the Middle East, maybe what's going on in Ukraine, Russia. And you are a combination of these two. So you grew up, religiously like a lot of people in the United States. And then you also have spent time in the military. And so I'm really excited to have you kind of help us understand the blending of those two. But let's start off with a little bit of background on your childhood and maybe that religious upbringing that you were brought up on.
So, like you said, I spent 5 years in the Marine Corps. I was brought up in I guess you could say, small town Iowa. I grew up in Iowa. I actually grew up near the capital of Iowa, which is Des Moines, but I refer to everything in Iowa as small town.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up in a very strict, what I would call Judeo-Christian conservative household. So I had two parents growing up. They're now divorced, but throughout my whole childhood, my parents were together, and I had three siblings, an older brother and two younger sisters. And we were all raised in a very strict Christian home, very conservative. We were actually, I would say, sheltered in a lot of ways and forced down into this box. We were homeschooled our entire life until the age of, college age. And so growing up where I was at, it was absolutely a bubble in so many different ways. We were just we were just kept in these boxes, in these bubbles, whether it was through Christianity, through religion, through our political ideology, our worldview, how we looked at other countries. And so growing up with that sheltered perspective, it always left me wanting to know more. I feel like when I was so sheltered and I wasn't exposed to all these things, that gave me the hunger to join the military. It gave me the hunger to start researching all of this stuff and learn this stuff for myself. So that was kind of the upbringing that I had. And I always talk about this because I need to preface this. I am Christian. I am personally Christian myself. But that didn't come through my faith and my belief in God and in Jesus Christ and in the Bible did not come through my forced teaching. Yes, I was raised in a household where we were forced to go to church every single Sunday. We were forced to believe in the Bible. We never looked at any other perspectives. We were hidden and kept away from theories like evolution, other religions. It was just, this is the Bible, this is God's word, this is what you believe. And so
let me ask you a question. I've talked about this with the other guys. Do you remember what Bible you were brought up on? Like, was it the NIV Bible? Was it just the King James Bible? Was it potentially this Scofield Bible that's received a lot of notoriety as of late? Do you remember that?
So I am familiar with the Scofield Bible. I don't remember having one of those Bibles in our house, the Scofield Bible specifically. We ran off of the NIV and the King James. My dad preferred the King James version. My church preferred the NIV. However, the Scofield Bible is so prominent in the churches because a lot of these pastors, both my parents went to a Bible college, Moody Bible Institute in Chicago. And at that school, they taught with a Scofield Bible. So whether these churches or whether these individual Christians or not are reading from the Scofield Bible every Sunday, the 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 teachings a lot of times come from and originate from the Scofield Bible in the schools and the institutions, and that trickles down into the churches.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Okay. And so, because I think right now, one of the things that is kind of coming to light is that Scofield Bible was heavily influenced by the Rothschild family who funded that project. And so the question is becoming, has a narrative of the Scofield Bible been implanted into the system of the United States really ever since 1909? And so I think right now what's happening, and you're a little bit of a testament of it, is people are kind of questioning the things that they were taught growing up. All right, go on. Carry on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Scofield Bible it did reshape Christianity, especially when it comes to evangelical churches, Protestant churches, those denominations. It was definitely an influential part of basically, I guess you could say, Jewifying the church in America. And here's the other thing. We'll probably get into this later, but I've traveled. I've been to roughly 22, 23 different countries
Mm.
in my life, and I've visited with Christians all over the world. And what I can say is this narrative that Christians, modern day Christians, are to support the modern day Jews is not a worldwide doctrine. This is primarily an American Christian ideology. And I think that stems from the Scofield Bible and all of the indoctrination that we have received from the church, from the Scofield Bible, because it's not a thing anywhere else. And it's not really a thing anywhere else in the world. This is an American Christian belief system. And I'll say one more thing on that.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I've traveled to, whether it was in the military or on my own personal travels, been to 22, 23 different countries. What I can tell you, being an American, and especially growing up in Iowa, which I already consider a bubble, I consider America a massive bubble. People in America do not venture out. They do not go to these other countries. They do not see the Middle East. They do not see what the rest of the world looks like and operates like and is. America is a bubble, and people are sheltered, even if you live in California, even if you live in New York, where you might have a bunch of diversity. This is still a bubble, and people don't understand what the rest of the world is really like. And I didn't realize that until I got out of Iowa, joined the military, and traveled, and then did all these personal traveling experiences for myself.
That's very interesting. And you know what? That is incredibly interesting for you to help us understand that maybe the Christianity or Christian views or this Judeo Christian mindset is not necessarily the same all around the world. I never even thought about that. I thought maybe it is all the same around the world. And that really does man, you can extrapolate that so many different ways, but obviously the United States is probably the biggest mecca for Christianity in terms of numbers. And then obviously we are the strongest country economically, militarily, and all of that. And so, if there was a place to conquer,
Doesn't that make sense?
yeah.
Isn't that a crazy coincidence?
Yeah, that is a crazy coincidence. All right, let me ask you this because I want to gear around this. You're on a mission right now and you're doing something and you've grown an Instagram following within, I think, a month, or not much longer than that, to over 40,000 people. And a lot of that is because, man, you are telling your truth, and you are telling kind of the what you're seeing through your eyes from your Christianity upbringing, from your military experience, and then definitely from this recent trip that you just took. So what are you doing? What are you up to, man? What is this plan for you, or what are you trying or wanting to do? I shouldn't even say trying, because you're doing it. What are you wanting to do?
Yeah, so like you said, my Instagram blew up very quickly, and I wasn't expecting that because I started posting like 33 days ago, just about a month ago. I started posting, and I'm already at about 41,000 followers. But I think the reason behind that is because it resonates. My message resonates with so many people. And there's so few people who are willing or able to talk about this stuff. I think people are waking up to the truth of what's going on in the relationship, the real relationship between America and Israel, and the relationship between Christians and Jews. People are starting to wake up, and it comes from a lot of what's going on in Gaza. And people are seeing the reports of aid workers being targeted and killed. They're seeing videos come out of convoys of paramedics being ambushed by IDF and being killed, and then nothing's done about it. So people are waking up. But here's the thing, nobody wants to talk about this stuff, or nobody has, I guess, the balls to talk about this stuff, because when people come out and talk about it, they receive criticism, they receive slander, they get fired, they get defunded, they get arrested. And now you get deported. If you have a green card and you say anything in criticism towards the war, basically criticizing a foreign government about what they're doing, the genocide that they're committing, if you say anything about that as a green card holder, you're at risk of getting deported. This has happened multiple times. We've seen this. So I think the reason why I'm blowing up so quickly is because I'm putting my face out there, and I'm actually talking about this stuff, and people know. But I guess I am a voice for people who don't want to talk about this or can't talk about it. But to get further into, I guess, what my mission is, with the background that I have coming from the military, being an American, being a white American Christian, I think my demographic, I want to wake up these people. I want to wake up the Christians. I want to wake up the people in America. I want to wake up the veterans. I want them to see the truth. And that's why I took the trip, because I've known this stuff. And we can go further back into my childhood when I started waking up to the truth of Israel and the relationship between America and Israel. I started waking up to the stuff when I was in high school. And we spoke about this the other day, but when I was 15, 16 years old, like I said, I grew up in this very strict Christian box in America, this bubble, and I wanted to know more about the truth of what's going on in the world. So I started going down these rabbit holes, and started seeing all this stuff about Israel, and stuff like the USS Liberty, a naval ship that Israel attacked, a U.S. naval ship that Israel attacked, killed 34 Americans. Nothing happened. We didn't retaliate. Nothing happened. It just got swept under the rug. Things like that. Things like Benjamin Netanyahu pulling us into the invasion of Iraq, which we had no business being in. In 2002, he spoke in front of Congress testifying that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. That was a lie. We got that intel, that information from the Israeli government, and then we were sent to go do their dirty work, stuff like that. So I started researching this stuff and realizing, all the money we're sending them. And I'm thinking to myself, as a 15, 16-year-old kid, as a Christian who was told my whole life, we have to support the Jews, we have to bless the Jews, we have to bless the nation of Israel. And I'm looking at this stuff and saying, well, that's very contradictory. Why would we as Americans, and why would we as Christians support a people that have attacked us, that have pulled us into wars, that have taken billions and billions, hundreds of billions of our dollars, and giving us nothing in return? America's greatest ally, they say. Israel's never fought with us in a single conflict. Here's a crazy statistic for you. More American troops have been killed by Israelis than have served alongside Israelis in foreign conflicts. That was a crazy statistic that I learned. So I'm just thinking, why are we supporting Israel? And as a Christian, it almost felt contradictory to be looking at this, to be researching this, because I've told my whole life we're supposed to support Israel. But now I'm looking at them as if they are our greatest enemy.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
let me ask you this question real quick, because that's one of the things. And again, being somebody that is not religious and doesn't have any of that background, that's one of the things I've tried to understand. When you guys were growing up, and in this case, I'm saying you guys as in Christians, Christian Americans, you were taught to support Israel, unequivocally. Why is that? Like, does it have to do with biblical prophecies, or like, why is that?
So again, it stems back to the Scofield Bible. This was not an overwhelming belief in churches in America. It really started becoming popularized after the Scofield Bible. But the rationale, and this is thousands of years of explanation wrapped up in a couple minutes. I'll try to do my best. But the history is Christians in America, or whatever Christian, I'll say it this way. There's two types of Christians. There's many types of Christians, but when it comes to the relationship with Jews, there's two types of Christians. There's Christians like me who know the truth and know biblically that we're not called to support the current state of Israel. And then there are Christians who are stuck in the old, dated ways of the Scofield Bible and believe that we as Christians have a calling, a God-given calling to support and bless the Jews and bless the state of Israel. Where does that stem from? That stems from Abraham. Abraham was given the old covenant by God. Abraham was proven to be faithful and loyal to God, and God in return said that he would give him descendants as numerous as the stars, which would later be the nation of Israel. And God said to Abraham, those who bless you, I will bless. Those who curse you, I will curse. And so that's the verse, and that's found in Genesis, thousands and thousands of years ago.
That's the big verse. Like, that is the verse I hear politicians saying all the time. And that's like the moneymaker, it seems.
Yes, that is their primary verse that they reference when they want to validate their theory that we're supposed to support the Jews. And so, like I said, this was a verse in Genesis at the time of Abraham, thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. So we have to follow the history of this. What does that mean? So God said, those who bless you, I will bless, and those who curse you, I will curse. He said this to Abraham. Abraham then went on to have Isaac, his first son, or his second son, after Ishmael. He had Isaac, and then Isaac had Jacob. Jacob, the grandson of Abraham, went on to have 12 sons. These 12 sons became the patriarchs for the nation of Israel, or the 12 tribes of Israel and Judah. There was 10 tribes in Israel and 2 tribes in the southern part in Judah. This was the nation of Israel. This is the people that God's talking about when he's giving Abraham the covenant, thousands and thousands of years ago. Now, those people, the people that descend from Abraham, are not the Jews of modern day. They're not the people that reside in Israel. They're not the modern day Jews. The Jews that live in Israel are Ashkenazi, Kavarian Jews that stem from Eastern Europe. They have no bloodline relation to Abraham or the 12 tribes of Jacob. These are basically people who converted to Judaism throughout history. Okay? And so let me paint a picture this way. Let's say if a Christian says, okay, we're supposed to support the Jews, supposed to support Israel. Okay, I'm a descendant from Europe. I'm a Christian, but what if I go to a synagogue and I say, okay, I want to convert to Judaism, and then I want to go move to Israel? Does that mean that Christians have to support me now? Well, that's basically what you're saying with these Jews who live in Israel now today. They come from Europe. They don't have descendants. They don't have bloodline descendant from Abraham or Jacob or any of the 12 tribes. And so there's another verse in Galatians, and to get to the second part of the story, so it starts with Abraham. He was given the first covenant, the old covenant from God. Thousands of years of history go by. The Israelites get kicked out of the land multiple times. And then to finish the story off, we need to fast forward to the time of Jesus Christ. When Jesus came, he was seen as the second Adam. Biblically teaching, Jesus came, he lived a sinless life, he died on the cross, he rose 3 days later, he ascended into heaven. And that is the second covenant, the new covenant, okay? And now we are living in the New Testament. In Galatians, it says there's neither Jew or Gentile, man or woman, slave or free. For those who are in Christ Jesus are the seed of Abraham. Okay, so speaking in modern day terms, since the time of Christ, since he fulfilled the prophecy, we're in the New Testament. That means that God's people are the Christians. That verse is proving that in today's time, the Christians, the church, the bride of Christ, these are God's people, not the Jews, not the people who subscribe to Judaism. If that makes sense.
That does make sense, actually. That actually makes a lot of sense, and honestly, that's what I'm hearing a lot of pastors now, Christian pastors who are really saying what you're saying, and it's almost going against, quite frankly, the narrative it seems that you grew up on and that several generations grew up on. So that's interesting. Let's get into what about when you went to the military? Was religion, I guess, a part of that military experience? I mean, like, is religion brought into the military at all? Do you guys go to church on Sundays when you were serving? Like, is there a tie there?
Not exactly. In the military, in the military, you're supposed to be apolitical, and we have the First Amendment. So you're allowed to practice whatever religion you believe in. So there's Muslims in the military, there's Jews in the military, there's Christians, there's Buddhists in the military. You're allowed to freely practice your religion, but it's not really a thing to evangelize to other people. You just kind of keep it to yourself. It's your own private life, and you have the right to practice that religion. But as far as the demographic of religious people in the military, it varies. There's pockets of Christians here and there. There's a lot of pockets of atheists. I served alongside a lot of atheists. I served around a decent amount of Christians, even some Muslims. So there's a big diversity of different beliefs in the military. It's not really something that's pushed.
I gotcha. And I'm assuming you guys, people in the military, their camaraderie, you know, is around being together in the military. So there's probably not the tension of religion the way there is outside of the military, right?
Yeah, it's almost I mean, it's almost a religion, or in the Marine Corps,
Yeah.
we call it a cult. We call the Marine Corps a cult
Yeah.
because of that camaraderie, because of that brotherhood. You have
Yeah.
that right there and of its own. You don't need religion to tie you all together.
I gotcha. I gotcha. All right, let's get into this trip, man. Tell us about this recent trip that was only a few weeks ago. So talk us through that.
Yeah, so this trip came about. I was there a couple weeks ago. I was there for about a week in the Holy Land, and now I refer to it as the Holy Land because whether you call it Israel or Palestine, it's all the Holy Land to me. And so the story behind that is I had a friend who was getting married in Dubai the week prior. I went to his wedding, and I had been wanting to go to actually Gaza since summer of 2024. So I remember when the war started. I remember very vividly when October 7th happened. I was still in the military, and I saw the news report come out about October 7th, and I realized, okay, Hamas just attacked a monster, and they're going to get absolutely mollywopped after this. They're going to get annihilated. I remember seeing that and thinking that, and feeling bad for the Palestinian civilians. So some time went on. I didn't really think about it. I wasn't too involved in the politics of it all. And then it was around the summertime of 2024, and if you remember, that was when Rafah was really picking up a lot of attention. There was all those sayings, "All eyes on Rafah," and basically the Israelis had cornered all the Palestinians down into the southern tip, which is Rafah, which is a tiny microcosm. It's a tiny little area where they were all cornered. You, you had children, you had civilians, you had refugee camps, and it was just getting absolutely annihilated. So I remember seeing that, and that's kind of when I woke up again and started paying a lot more attention. And at that point in time, I said to myself, I want to go to Rafah, like I want to go to Gaza and do something and help. Like I'm tired of seeing this on my phone. I'm tired of seeing this on the news. I want to do something. And so there was no feasible way, and there's still no feasible way for me to actually get to Gaza. So I never made the trip. Some personal things happened in my own life that I had to focus on. And then it wasn't until 2025 when the ceasefire was broken by Israel. There was a short stint of time where there was a ceasefire, and then Israel broke the ceasefire. And that's again when I woke up and said, okay, this is the time. I am going to dedicate some of my time and money to this. And I'm not just going to donate, but I'm going to go. I'm going to go and I'm going to see it for myself. I'm going to document it, and I'm going to try to help in any way that I can. And this came a little bit, maybe a week after I started posting. I was posting on Instagram, getting a little bit of traction. And so, yeah, I went to my friend's wedding in Dubai the week prior, and then I booked a one-way ticket from Dubai to Tel Aviv. The reason that I booked a one-way ticket is because, number one, I was posting about this stuff, criticism towards the war, criticism towards Israel. And through my military experience, I have connections. I have friends who are in the intelligence sphere, I guess you might call it. So I'm decently well connected, and I had friends that were there, and I also had a connection, and I can't compromise any names, but I have multiple connections in the Holy Land, in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem and in different parts of the West Bank. And so I reached out to my contacts and I said, this is what I want to do. I want to go and I want to help any way that I can, whether it's a food drive in Jerusalem, or if I can go to the West Bank, or if you can get me close to Gaza. I want to come and I want to do something and I want to document it. And so I worked with some of my contacts. Nothing was set in stone. There was no concrete plan for me to get there and like, I'm going to arrive on this date and I'm going to do this, this, and this, because you just couldn't coordinate that online. They monitor social media, they monitor your phones. So there wasn't too much that I could disclose about my plans. Anyways, jumping back to Dubai, I bought a one-way ticket to Tel Aviv because I didn't know if I was actually going to be allowed entry into the country, because they do deny
Yeah.
people entry.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
with my background, I have a clearance from the military. I was in the United States military, and now I'm criticizing Israel openly online. So there was good reason for me to believe that maybe I would get turned away. So I bought the one-way ticket. I went to Tel Aviv. I got through the airport on Passover. So this was during Holy Week. This was during all the religious holidays for the Jews and Christians. I got through. I went to my hotel in Jerusalem,
Did
and
they
then I met up.
scrutinize you at all as you were going through, like as you go through customs or checkpoints? And then the other question is, was it super locked down? Like, was it incredibly, you hear all these stories. There's like a checkpoint every 5 feet there. I mean, I think that might be an exaggeration, but was it very, I guess, was there a real strict protocol?
So for people who have traveled, it is a much more strict protocol getting into Israel. So if you've traveled before, it's not going to be the same thing. You're going to have to go through much more questioning. They probably know a lot more about you before you actually enter and come through. But for me, I was lucky because I showed up on Passover. I think what went in my favor is the fact that it was a national holiday. And so there was literally one lady working at the counter, and there was a big line. So I think she just didn't want to be there on a holiday, and she was just getting people through.
Got it.
So
Got it.
I lucked out. But I have heard stories of people getting denied, getting basically interrogated, taken into back rooms, and using scare tactics. Now, something did happen similar to that on my way out. We'll get to that later. But uh, coming in, it was relatively seamless. Um, and so I went to my hotel in Jerusalem, and I met up with one of my contacts. He's an American over there, very good contact. And my first day, I basically was just getting my bearings around the city of Jerusalem. So I walked around, saw the old city, went to a couple tourist spots. Again, it was Passover, so a lot of stuff was closed. I'm just kind of getting a lay of the land and seeing it all for myself in Jerusalem. I do that the first day, and then the second day is kind of like my tourist day in Jerusalem. So I was flying solo that day. I went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which was important to me. That was where Christ was crucified and buried. Um, I was actually there on Palm Sunday, which was cool to see. And then I went to a couple other tourist places on that second day, just wandering around the city, wasn't doing too much for work. Again, I didn't have anything set in stone, no concrete plans for what I was going to do, because my plans fell through of what I was going to do in the West Bank and stuff like that. Now, my contact over there was trying to get me set up with somebody who could take me to the West Bank, basically a guide. You have to remember, this whole area, Jerusalem, the West Bank, the Holy Land, is a massive tourist destination. And the economy runs off of tourists, but there's a war going on. So tourism is absolutely dead. And I mean, so dead that if you've ever been to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, I walked right in with no line. I walked right up to everything, no lines at all. There was barely any people there, tourist wise. So I didn't know if I could find a guide that was willing to take me to the dangerous parts of the West Bank. So I was working with my connections over there. they had something loosely set up, but it fell through. Now, this was on the second day that I was there in Jerusalem, and it was about 10 o'clock at night. And I had just left a gym. I went to go get a quick workout in Jerusalem. And I said, okay, I want to get some food, but I'm not eating at any Israeli places. I'm only eating at the Palestinian places. And so I have to walk back to the old city in Jerusalem and find a Palestinian place that's still open so I can get some dinner. So I go in and I find this Lebanese place. I go in and I eat there. And this is kind of where the story gets a little crazy, in my opinion. So I go eat at this Palestinian place, and it's like 10:30 at night. There's like four
And
older
by the way, you're
Palestinian.
in Jerusalem, or are you in East Jerusalem? Like, I know East Jerusalem is Palestinian, but then is Jerusalem Israeli controlled? Or give us a quick lay of that land.
Okay, yes, Jerusalem is technically Palestine. In 1967, the Israelis basically, I guess if you want to say conquered or took over a large portion of Jerusalem, but it's occupied Palestine. Majority of it is occupied Palestine, but Israel runs it. The government runs it. They own it. It's their city, more or less. But yes, you have a large amount. The majority of the people there are Palestinian. The majority are Arabs. So you have Palestinian quarters, you have an Armenian quarters, you have a Jewish quarters, and these are just areas that are sectioned off for each demographic. Okay, so yes, the east part is the Palestinian quarters, and that's kind of where my hotel was, and that's where I was hanging out most of the time. And so that's where I went to go get dinner that night.
And
Uh,
is there a Christian quarter as well? Are there a lot of Christians in that area?
yeah, so I don't know if I would say Christian per se, but there's Armenian and there's
Eh,
Palestinian, and between those two, you have your Christians. So in the
got it.
Jewish quarters, you don't really have Christians; they're Jews. They're just Israelis. You have your super strict Orthodox Jews and your more secular Jews that live in that area. And then in your Armenian quarters, you have a lot of the Christians, and then you still have a lot of Christians in the Palestinian quarter as well. But it's Muslims, it's Christians, it's Palestinians, or it's Muslims, Christians, and Jews, all living in this one little melting pot.
Okay. And I know
Um,
you said tourism was kind of dead, but like during the day, I mean, is it a tense atmosphere, or is it like if I dropped in there, would I be like, "Whoa, this is crazy what's going on?" Or would I think I'm just, in Rome at the Vatican, like on a touristy trip?
you would think you're in Rome with 20 times more Roman guards.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
so you see the Magav, which I believe is their, I believe the Magav is their basically their border patrol, border police, and then IDF, and then their local police. And you see these guys and girls, and they're conscripts. Most of these people are conscripts to the military. They have to serve a certain amount of time at a certain age, but also a lot of them stay in and a lot of them volunteer. But these are Israelis. If you are a Palestinian who lives there, you cannot be a conscript. You have to be a Jew, and you have to speak Hebrew, and you have to be Israeli. So those are the conscripts, and you have them all over the place.
And they're
Um,
armed. They're walking around with a machine
they're
gun or
armed.
something.
They have full kits, so helmets, headsets, body armor, rifles, pistols, shotguns. They're basically, I guess you could say, armed to the teeth. And they're everywhere. They're at all the tourist destinations. They're outside all the synagogues. They're near all the churches, all the mosques. You'll see them in every street corner. They're just everywhere. Um, and so, interesting thing about them, a couple times. If there's anybody from the military watching this, this will speak volumes to the incompetency of some of these people. But coming at it from a military perspective, I'm seeing all this militarization of this city. I'm looking at all these guys, and on probably 3 or 4 occasions, I saw a either IDF or Magav troop holding their weapon with their finger inside the trigger housing, their finger on the trigger, which if you're in the military watching this, these guys are con one or con three, and they're just sitting there with their finger in on the trigger essentially. So that if you're in the military, that speaks volumes to the incompetency of some of these people, and the lack of care. And we'll get into that later, the type of stuff that they do in the West Bank. but yes, it looks like a police state, it looks like a military state, but you have all these beautiful churches and mosques and historical and religious sites everywhere. Um, so I did spend some time in the Jewish quarter. I spent some time in the Palestinian quarter, and what I can say the difference between those two, and this goes along with all the Middle Eastern countries that I've been to. And I'm a Christian. I wear my cross around my neck everywhere that I go. When I was in the Palestinian quarters, I didn't feel discriminated against. I didn't get any funny looks by the Palestinians, by the Muslims. Totally different story when I was in the Israeli Jewish quarter. I went to the Western Wall and I walked around the Jewish quarter. And when I went into the Western Wall, they had very tight security. I had my cross out on my chain like this, and the guard said, "You have to tuck that in. You have to tuck that in before you go into the area where the Western Wall is." And he was telling me that for my safety,
Yeah.
because if I wear my cross at the Western Wall with all these Christian loving Jews, I don't know what's going to happen. But he told me for my safety, I need to tuck it in. So I did when I went to the Western Wall, and then when I left, I pulled it out. I was still in the
By the
Jewish
way, the
quarter.
Western Wall, is that famous wall that like seems like all the presidents go there to pay their respects?
Yeah, they believe it's the Temple Mount, or what's left of the Second Temple.
Oh, okay.
Um, so it has a lot of religious significance to the Jews. And so they go there and they pray there. There was like hundreds. It was a sea. It was a sea of Jews at the wall. I walked in there. I was the only one who wasn't obviously a Jew, just in my regular civilian clothes. I had this hat on, literally, just walking around. And I got a lot of looks, but it's probably because I was just dressed differently. Anyways, when I left the Western Wall, I was still in the Jewish quarters, walking around the streets, and I pulled my chain out. I pulled my cross out, and I couldn't tell you how many eyeballs looked here and then looked here. Just kind of dirty looks, people giving me side eyes, people giving me dirty looks. Now, I didn't get spit on like some people think. People think that if Christians go there, Jews are going to spit on them. Nothing like that happened. I must say, I was never attacked or yelled at or spit on or anything crazy like that. But definitely, what I can say is I definitely did not feel welcomed when I had my cross out in the Jewish quarters. Totally different story on the Muslim, Christian, Palestinian quarters. The hospitality was unlike anything I've ever seen in my life, period, out of 22, 23 countries that I've been to.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't even understand that. Like that's hard to make sense of from me. Like what you said earlier about, so did he tell you to tuck it in for your safety against Jewish people there, or even Christians would be mad that you're wearing a cross?
I mean, maybe some Zionist Judeo Christians,
Okay. Okay. Got it.
uh, the crazy Zio Christians might be mad, but no, it was for the Jews.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so my safety going in there with all the Jews would not be welcoming for me, or possibly safe for me to go to the Western Wall with my cross out. Yeah.
It's interesting. All right.
Yeah.
Keep going, man. This is fascinating.
Yeah. So back to what we were saying, I went to this restaurant, Palestinian restaurant. It's like 10:30 at night. I go there, I get my food, get some falafel, and there's like four Palestinian gentlemen, elderly, probably in their 60s or 70s. They're also at the restaurant eating and hanging out. And I finish my food, and it's probably 11 o'clock at night at this point. This is the day before that I had planned to go to the West Bank, but I had nothing set up. I had
Mm.
nothing concrete, nothing, no concrete plans set up for me to go to the West Bank and do what I wanted to do. And so I leave the restaurant, I walk out into the street, and I'm on my phone looking up Google Maps to go back to my hotel for the night. And one of the Palestinian gentlemen that was eating in there, he was outside having a cigarette. He walks up to me and like taps me on the shoulder, and him and I just start talking. And he's asking me, "Oh, where you from?" "Oh, I'm an American tourist. This is my first time here." He's like, "Oh, what'd you do? What have you seen?" I'm like, "Oh, I went here, I did this." And he's like, "Oh, what else do you have planned for your trip?" And I said, "Well, actually, I wanted to go visit some places in the West Bank." And we get to talking more, and this guy, come to find out, was a Palestinian Christian who had worked for the UN and retired from working for the UN. And so it starts to click in my brain that maybe I can ask this guy if he knows of any organizations or something that I can get set up with to go help and go to the West Bank.
Yeah.
And mind you, like I'm thinking in the back of my head, like almost counter intel my entire trip. I'm thinking like looking over my shoulder because of my background, because of what's on my Instagram. I'm thinking I need to look over my shoulder and stuff. So I'm not just blindly trusting anybody at first. But this guy tells me he's a Palestinian Christian, worked for the UN. So I'm starting to think maybe I can trust him. And I say, okay, I want to go. I tell him I want to go to the West Bank. I want to see these religious sites. I want to see these tourist sites. But my main goal is I want to see what's going on in the West Bank. I want to see the truth for myself. And if you know of any organizations that I can get set up with, maybe they can help me, maybe I can donate to the cause or something like that. He says, well, I don't really know of any organizations per se, but hold on. I know a guy. I know a guy who takes people to the West Bank sometimes. Let me give him a call. So he calls this guy. It was a family member of his. He gets him on the phone. They talk for about 2 minutes, and then he hangs up and he says, okay, follow me. He walks me down a couple blocks and he takes me to this guy's house at like 11 o'clock at night.
This is 11 o'clock. I mean, you feel safe? Did you feel safe?
In the Palestinian quarters, I
Okay.
felt completely safe. I felt more safe there than I did in some places in the United States. Very welcoming people, no issues there. And so this guy takes me to his family member's house at 11 o'clock at night. And this guy comes out into the street, shakes my hand, introduces himself, and invites me into his house. Like at 11 o'clock at night, just met me on the street. And like this is a testament to the hospitality of the Palestinians. And you'll hear more stories like this. But he invites me to his house. We go up. He shows me his house, beautiful house in Jerusalem, introduces me to his family. And then we sit down and we start talking. He brings tea. We sit down, we start talking. And I tell him, I'm an American tourist. I'm here visiting the Holy Land, and I want to go to the West Bank. And so he tells me, okay, I can do that. Like, I can take you to the West Bank. What do you want to do? What do you want to see? And again, like, I'm treading lightly when I talk to him. I'm like, well, I want to go to Bethlehem. I want to go to Nazareth. I want to see these Christian sites and stuff and so on. And he's like, okay. And he's telling me, like, it's a little dangerous there, but we can go. And I'm like, okay, well, actually, you know, if you don't mind, if you're comfortable with it, I would like to see the dangerous parts. Like, if you're okay with it, take me. I kind of want to see, as well as an American here, I want to see what's going on. Like, I want to see where all my money's going to. And so I told him, if you're comfortable, take me to the dangerous parts. And he kind of leans forward and he says, okay, I can do that. I can take you. And he agrees to take me to exactly everywhere that I want to go. And I also told him that if you can coordinate it or get me in touch with somebody where I can help some Palestinians that are there, that would be great. And so he coordinated a meetup with 9 families for him and I to go visit with in the West Bank that night. Like, he stayed up that night and coordinated a situation where we could go visit 9 families that live in the West Bank, Palestinians. And so I go back to my hotel. He picks me up the next morning at about 8 a.m. and we go into the West Bank. And so when you leave Jerusalem, Jerusalem is right next to the West Bank. When you leave Jerusalem, going into the West Bank, easy peasy, no problem. They don't have any issues with people going into the West Bank from Jerusalem. Coming out of the West Bank is a completely different story. It's like leaving a country with much more restrictions. So we go in there, and in my mind, and in this guy's mind, he knows that I want to see stuff. So as we drive in, he's pointing out Palestinian towns. He's pointing out settler towns. He's pointing out the apartheid wall. He's pointing out checkpoints. He's giving me the dynamic and the lay of the land and how things work here. And as we're driving through, you can see, there's 700 checkpoints. There's 700 Israeli checkpoints in the West Bank.
700? And the West Bank is small, right? Like,
it's tiny. The entire map of the Holy Land is roughly the size of New Jersey, and the West Bank is a little chunk of that. So if you can imagine, West Bank is tiny. It's teeny tiny, and there's 700 checkpoints in the West Bank, controlled 100% by the Israeli government. And so he's telling me there's 700 checkpoints here. We might hit some checkpoints. When we drive past the checkpoints, he's pointing them out. I'm taking videos. I'm taking pictures of everything, documenting everything. And you can see up on a hill, you would see a Palestinian neighborhood, which was just super run down. And you could see parts of the buildings were knocked down by bulldozers. And it just looks like a bad neighborhood, like run down neighborhood. And then over here on this hill, you have a brand new, very nice Israeli settlement, illegal Israeli settlement, because this again is the West Bank. This is Palestine. There's no argument here about, is this Israel? Is this Palestine? Jerusalem? Is it Israel? Is it no? This is the West Bank. This is Palestine. No questioning it. You can ask the UN. The UN will say, this is Palestine. It's occupied by Israel, but this is Palestine. And the Israeli government controls it 100%. So I'm seeing these Israeli settlements all over the place. And basically what they will do and what they've been doing since 1948 is they're just encroaching further and further into Palestinian land. And so what they will do is they will knock down Palestinian homes, level entire neighborhoods owned by Palestinians, and then they will build atop that their Jewish settlements, their Israeli settlements. And these are Israeli civilians. And in some cases, these are American Jews that move there and are incentivized to move to the West Bank and prop up in these settlements. And the settlers are subsidized by the Israeli government. These people don't work. The Israeli government subsidizes and pays for their entire lifestyle. They don't work. And guess where that money's coming from?
Me and you.
Me and you,
Yeah.
brother.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing these settlements. He's telling me the dynamic of them. And so we drive further in, and the first stop we make is at a place called Shiloh. Now, Shiloh, for anybody who is religious, has an Abrahamic religion background, this is the place where the tabernacle was in the Bible and the Ark of the Covenant. So it's very significant to the Jews, also to the Christians. I'm not sure how the significance of it for the Muslims, but for Jews and Christians, this is a very significant historical site. And so we go there, and he's showing me this kind of as a tourist, showing me the site. And it's a historical site that's completely run and operated by Israeli settlers. And I remember for the first time seeing an Israeli settler at Shiloh who was armed. So in Jerusalem, you will see civilians walking around with M4s, AR-15s with rifles. And these are just people in civilian clothing, just civilians who are armed in Jerusalem. You'll see it all over the place. But this was my first time seeing an armed Israeli civilian in the West Bank in somebody else's country. And so I saw three men with their families in civilian attire here at this place in Shiloh in the West Bank, who were armed, had an M4 slung around their shoulder, a loaded M4 AR-15 style rifle slung around their shoulder. And to get further into that story, so the Israeli settlers are subsidized again and incentivized to move to the West Bank and prop up these settlements. Not only are they given all that by the government, but they're armed by the Israeli government. So the Israeli government will give these civilians weapons to go to the West Bank and be armed and walk around with their rifles. And there was during the Biden administration, we give Israel the majority of their armaments, their weapons. The majority of it comes from America, okay? And after September 7th, we increased our contribution to their weapons. We signed a deal with them to give them a certain amount of rifles. And these are AR-15 M4 style rifles that I used in the military. And so this was an agreement that we said, we're going to give you these weapons and you need to use them for the war with Hamas in Gaza. And what happened was Ben-Gvir, the security minister of Israel, was a super controversial character.
Yeah.
He took the liberty of taking our weapons that we gave them, and he's on camera. They're boasting about this. They're bragging about this. There's videos of them like smiling and stuff. And Ben-Gvir is sitting at a table handing Israeli settlers, civilians in the West Bank, our weapons that we gave them. And these are weapons that were supposed to be given to the military to fight Hamas. And Ben-Gvir is giving our weapons to these settlers, illegal settlers in the West Bank, to arm them and then to later kill Palestinians in the West Bank. And not only Palestinians, they're killing Americans in the West Bank too, with these weapons that we fucking gave them. It's insane. And so I saw that.
That is insane. I mean, to arm civilians with these weapons that obviously were meant for something else, which what they were meant for is insane. But the fact that they're using them for this and doing that is crazy. That is crazy. All right, keep going.
Yeah, so that was the first time I saw it firsthand. Like, I have pictures, I have videos of these guys carrying these fucking rifles that we fucking gave them. And this is completely, in every way, every fucking angle you look at it is completely illegal. But Ben-Gvir gave them these rifles, and a lot of these settlers are armed. and they'll use them to harass the Palestinians. They'll use them to kill the Palestinians in the West Bank, in somebody else's country. Okay, so we leave Shiloh. The next place we go to, and again, I told my guide, I said, take me to the worst parts you can think of. There are three main towns in the West Bank that are the worst. It's Nablus, it's Jenin, and it's Hebron. The first day we went to two of those towns. We went to Jenin and we went to Nablus. What we were doing in Jenin and Nablus is the first place he took me to was a church. This was a church built by Queen Helena, and the significance of why she built a church there is because this was built around the cave with the story where Jesus healed the 10 lepers. So we went there, and then we met up with a Palestinian Christian contact, and from there, this person helped us get in contact with the other Palestinian families, and these were 6 families that we visited in the West Bank the first day, all in Jenin and Nablus. When you get into Jenin and Nablus, you're in a different world. This is full occupation. This is full military police state. This is a full apartheid. This is a full dystopian world. If I can explain the West Bank to anybody who's never been there, if you've ever seen or read a book, The Hunger Games, this is a dystopian world. It's a police state. It's completely run by a foreign government, oppressing and controlling these people 100%. And you have 3 sectors of the West Bank. You have the A block, the B block, and the C block. And it used to be that the C and B block were the worst parts. C was the worst, B was the next worst, and then A was kind of a little bit better. Now it's just congruent all the way through. It's all 100% controlled by Israel. This is a full police state, okay? You will see military vehicles driving up and down the streets. You will see bulldozers. You will see checkpoints where you have Israeli soldiers armed at the checkpoints. You'll see it everywhere, okay? And these checkpoints are to restrict the movement of the Palestinians. So we get to Jenin, and I think we went to Nablus first. And I remember my guide telling me he was shocked that we were in Nablus and didn't have any issues. He was shocked that we didn't have any issues with the Israeli government, and he knew this was a dangerous part. He told me that. He said, well, we shouldn't go down this road. We should avoid this because these are dangerous parts. There's raids that go on there. There's Palestinians that get killed there, arrests that happen all the time, a little bit of rock throwing, stuff that goes on there. It's a bad area. And when you go there, you can see it firsthand. You'll see buildings that have been knocked over. You will see in the road, you'll see tank track marks that have destroyed the streets, destroyed parts of the city. And so when we get there, we go to a grocery store and we buy a bunch of food. And the plan is, this is like off the cuff. We just made this plan the night before of what I was going to do to like go help these people, whatever I could. So we go to a grocery store, we buy a bunch of food, and we get some cash out. And the plan is we're going to go to these houses, we're going to drop off the food and money, and then we're going to visit with the families. And I'm going to speak to them, and I'm going to get to know them and their story. And so we go to the first house, and here's what I can say.
And these are these 9 families that he had. Like who found these families? He knew them.
People through people.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Okay. And are they Christian Palestinians?
So the first day it was 6 Christian Palestinian families. The second day it was a mixture of Christian and Muslim families.
Okay.
But these are Palestinian families that live in the West Bank. They've lived in the West Bank their entire life.
Got it.
Their generation from generation grew up there. And so we go to the first house, and we go in, and I'm not going to speak too much about the families again. I don't want to compromise anybody here, but
yeah. And by the way, your goal was you wanted to get their perspective, right? Like, you just wanted to understand what life was like, and maybe even what life has been like the past 18 months when October 7th happened from their perspective.
Exactly. So number one, I wanted to go and see everything for myself.
Yeah.
But I actually wanted to talk to people who experience this every single day and have experienced it their entire life. So we go and we visit the first family. And what I can say about all the families that was congruent, a couple things. But the thing that stood out to me, the most profound thing that stood out to me is the sheer hospitality, the kindness of these people, the generosity of these people, the love that they share. They welcomed me into their home, and these are just very generous, nice, hospitable people. And there's a picture painted of them that the Israeli propaganda machine gives us, that they're all terrorists, that they're all evil Muslim terrorists. And unfortunately, the United States population, and especially the Christian population, has bought that fucking lie for decades. That and this goes for all Muslims. I've been to about 5 different Muslim countries, and I'm not here to support Islam. I'm Christian, but Muslim people are not all radical terrorists. The
Yeah.
vast majority of them are very nice, hospitable people. I've experienced the most hospitality in my life from Muslims, believe it or not. But they wouldn't want you to believe that. So we go in and we visit with this family, and I'm not going to go over every single family individually, but with all the families, the main issue that they have, number one, safety, of course, money, but the issue that they all have, the biggest issue is a lack of work. They don't have jobs. They don't have work there. In the West Bank, the tourist economy is dead. A lot of them used to work in the tourist industry. They can no longer do that. And in these households, you would have entire families, not just immediate family, but extended family. You'd have the grandparents, you'd have cousins sometimes, you'd have all the kids, no matter their age, whether they were in their 20s, 30s, or 40s, and the parents. So in some households, you have 7 to 10 people. And there wasn't a single household that we went to where they had more than one source of income. It was one source of income. It was one single family member working to provide for the whole house. And these kids live there, you know, in their 20s when they're adults, because they don't have the money to leave. They can't leave. And they also don't want to abandon their family. They all just come together and try to support each other under one roof. But the reason they don't have work is because, number one, the tourist industry is dead. But number two, the Israeli government controls everything. Their movement throughout the West Bank. Okay, if they want to get if they're a carpenter or something, or they have some sort of trade, they need to get a license, a permit from the Israeli government to fucking build in their own country. And it's very difficult for them to get. So if you build houses for a living, you have to go ask a foreign fucking government if you can build a house on your land. And oftentimes they don't let them do that because they want to push them out. They don't want Palestinians building. They want Israelis building. And they want the Palestinians going out. So they don't let them do stuff like building. And then also, it's very difficult for them to find work in the West Bank because the economy's dead. And if they want to work outside of the West Bank, they have to go to Jerusalem. It's next to impossible for a Palestinian to get permission from the Israeli government to leave the West Bank to go fucking anywhere, especially Jerusalem. And so if there was one case, one woman that I met in all the 9 houses who had permission to work in Jerusalem. She was like a cleaner or something like that, a maid, and she worked in Jerusalem. But everybody else had to find ins and out jobs in the West Bank. And let's say you live in Nablus, but you want to work in Bethlehem. Shouldn't be that fucking far away. This is the West Bank. It's teeny tiny. But if you want to drive from Nablus to Jerusalem, it might take you 15 minutes with no traffic, but there's 700 fucking checkpoints in the country. So it might take you 2.5 hours just to get to fucking work. And that was something that I heard. Stories that I heard where people had to take back road, fucking desert, off-road tracks to get to work, and it took them 2.5 hours just to get to work. Stuff like this. So it's very difficult for these people to have jobs.
And this is all inside the West Bank, all inside the geography we consider the West Bank. And then Jerusalem technically is not inside the West Bank. It's right next to the West Bank. And what you said earlier, getting from Jerusalem into the West Bank is no problem, but getting from the West Bank out to Jerusalem or to anywhere in order to try to work or in order to try to do anything, you've got tremendous checkpoints. You've got a total lockdown situation. And so the concept of even being able to do that seems so difficult.
Next to impossible. It's next to, even if they have family members, let's say, because this is a common thing too. You might have a cousin. If you live in West Bank, you might have a cousin that lives in Jerusalem, but you can't go visit them. If your grandma's dying on her deathbed in Jerusalem, you can't go to her funeral, stuff like that. That stuff is just normal life.
That's crazy. I didn't know the West Bank was locked down like that. I thought Gaza was locked down like that. I thought all of the open air prison talk and all of the, I guess the things that I've heard, I thought that was more applicable to Gaza. So it's fascinating to learn that the West Bank is exactly like that, because I thought the West Bank was, technically controlled by the Palestinian Authority, the PA, who again I think is in cahoots with
Yeah.
Netanyahu anyway. So okay, maybe
And
that does
and
make
it's
sense.
interesting that you say that. I do believe the same thing, that they are a little bit corrupted in cahoots, if you want to call it that. But to play devil's advocate, they kind of get their arm twisted by the Israeli government. They're not going to get funding if they don't follow orders, if they don't do what they say. So in a way, yes, they might be corrupt in some ways, but again, the Israeli government is also twisting their arm. The PA, the PLO, which is the governing body for the Palestinians in the West Bank. Again, Hamas, who we're fighting, is in Gaza. They're not in the West Bank.
Yeah, yeah.
So why do we have
How
this
far is
military occupation in the West Bank?
how far is the West Bank from Gaza? Do you have any idea?
It's on the complete opposite side of the country. So Gaza is on the west coast, bordering Egypt and the Mediterranean, and then the West Bank is all the way on the east, and it borders Jordan and the Dead Sea.
Got it. Yeah, yeah. Are they
So
like 3 hours apart? Maybe like a few hours apart, though,
few
right?
hours, three or 4 hours, yeah.
Okay, got it, got it, got it.
Um,
Okay, okay. So let me ask you this. Wow, dude, what an incredible trip. Oh my goodness. So the collective themes that you can pull out, because I don't want to talk about any of these families specifically, but the collective theme from all 9 of these families was, difficulty finding work, if any. And then are they happy? Like, is there general vibe in the household? I don't know. Are they just so depressed, or are they, I don't know, somehow happy?
it's a mixture of both. I mean, when I visited them, they seemed joyful. Obviously, they're living in severe oppression. They're living in a dystopian world under the oppression of a foreign government. But yeah, they're generally happy. I mean, that's the consensus that I pulled from them when I was there. But again, you hear their stories and how they've had family members killed by the IDF, how they can't work, how they get arrested for taking pictures of tanks, how they can't leave their town at certain points in the day, or they're locked in their towns for days on end because the checkpoints are closed down, stuff like that. So yes, they're depressed, they can't work. You would have children who were in their 20s who had a degree. There was a one girl who she had a nursing degree, but she never worked, and she was like 24, and she couldn't work. She couldn't work anywhere. She couldn't work in Jerusalem. There was nowhere for her to work in the West Bank, and she wants to work. She wants to, like, she's pursuing this stuff in life. She got her degree. She has ambitions and goals in life, but she can't do anything about it. And so, yes, because of that, of course, they're depressed. There's a lot of issues that they're dealing with, and it's just the whole occupation is trying their best to make the Palestinian life as miserable as possible. And there's other instances I can give you of this being factual. The Palestinians are only, and this is since September 7th. So before September 7th, it did get worse since the attack. But relatively, it's always been bad, always been terrible. But
Since October, since October 7th, you
excuse
mean?
me, yes,
Okay, got it. Yeah.
October 7th. Thanks for the correction. But yeah, since October 7th, life there has gotten a lot worse. And one instance I can give you of that is, so the Israelis control their water supply, and they only give the Palestinians water once a week. And so, since they only get running water once a week, what the Palestinians have to do is they have to go buy water tanks and put them on the side of their house. And I would see these and I asked, like, why do they have water tanks all over the place? And I was told, we only get water once a week and we have to survive off this water. And we would be driving past these houses and you would see empty water tanks on the ground next to the house with fucking bullet holes in it. So not only are they giving them water once a week, but they then have to go spend their limited money on water. And then the Israelis are coming by and fucking lighting up their water tanks and getting rid of their water. Like, it's shit like that where they just harass them constantly. It's a constant barrage of harassment to make their life as miserable as possible.
And you saw all this with your own eyes.
I saw it. I have pictures. I have videos. I talked to the people that have experienced it firsthand. It's not a fucking conspiracy theory. You can look up pictures. Here's the other thing. This genocide is the most well-documented genocide in history and the most denied.
Yeah, that's an excellent statement. Wow, that is an excellent statement. It's definitely the most well documented. We're all watching it on our phones, and you're right, it's the most denied. Wow. All right, listen, let's do this because I know you're a little bit pressed for time today. I wanna do a follow-up with you where I wanna dig into more of the exacts of that trip, and then I also wanna kinda get back to your military a little bit. But let me ask you this, was there any issues getting out of the West Bank that day? And then any issues in getting out of the country?
So yes, that's yeah. We should do another call because we could talk for days about all this
Yeah.
stuff. But yes, when I left, there's two airports that people fly out of when you're in the Holy Land. You either fly out of Tel Aviv or you fly out of Amman, Jordan, which is about, depending on what road you take, 2 to 4 hours from Jerusalem. So, because again, my background, the fact that I was speaking out on Israel publicly online, and the fact that I was there in the West Bank documenting this, I figured I'm probably going to have some fucking issues when I try to leave here. So, I'm not going to go through Tel Aviv and get fucking interrogated and get my phones confiscated and all this stuff. So I decide to book a flight out of Amman, Jordan. And so I tell my contacts there, I'm like, okay, I'm going to book a flight out of Amman, Jordan, and that's where I'm going to leave from. Would you recommend that? They said, yes. If you go out of Tel Aviv, you're definitely going to get questioned. You have to watch out for this and this. You might get held there for hours. So you should try to go out of Amman. And there was two border crossings that you can leave in the West Bank, leaving the Holy Land into Jordan. One of them is closer. It's about 2 hours total drive from Jerusalem to the airport. But I was told that this crossing is a little bit more sketch, and they only open at 8 a.m. and I'm leaving at like 12:10 in the afternoon. And so I was told you're going to have to go all the way up north and go around the longer routes, but it should be safer for you. So I take that route. I leave my hotel at 5 in the morning today. I'm going to leave. We go to the border crossing, and it's closed. We get there at like 6:45, and it's closed. This really Humvee pulls up with some guys, and they say the border doesn't open until 8:30. So I had to sit and wait in the desert for like 2 hours till the border opened. Eventually, the border opened. I walk through, or not, I don't walk through, but I walk in, and I go into the building, and it's just me and a bunch of Jordanians crossing. So I'm the only white guy. I'm kind of sticking out like a sore thumb. And so I go up to the counter with this lady. I give her my passport. She asks me the first barrage of questions, which is like your standard, entry exit of country questions. Who are you? What are you doing here? Where did you visit? Where did you stay? Blah, blah, blah. How long were you here? All that stuff. And then she just keeps going further and further and further and further and further into the questioning. Did you visit the West Bank? Where did you go in the West Bank? Who did you visit in the West Bank? What did you see in the West Bank? Um, Asking me like specific questions like who I saw, names, who I stayed with, all that stuff. And then just going further down the rabbit hole of questions. She questioned me for probably 10 minutes at the counter. And then she said, okay, can you have a seat over there on those benches? And I'm like, sure, can I have my passport? And she's like, no, I'll hold on to this. So I go and sit down on these benches and I sit there for probably 15, 20 minutes. And I'm looking at my watch, like, my flight's gonna take off in a few hours. I gotta get going. And so I'm sitting on these benches, and this Magav guy walks up to me. He's one of the border guard guys, and he's got tactical clothing on with a pistol on his hip. Walks up to me and he says, "Hey, I need you to follow me." So I grab my bags, I follow him, and I follow him into this open corridor of the building where I was at, and I get surrounded. I get surrounded by four guys with rifles. And we're in like this diamond formation where they're around me like this, and I'm in the middle. So I'm
Mhm.
standing in the middle of these four guys, and they're facing me with their rifles, just standing there. It's like this like staring match. I'm looking at all of them. They're not saying anything. And then one of them says, okay, follow me. And then we turn around and we walk to this back room, and we're in formation. Like the four dudes are around me like a force field with their rifles. They're playing a scare tactic. They're trying to mess with me. They're trying to get in my head. I know this. And I'm just like, okay, come on, we need to get this over with. I need to get to my flight. So we go to this back room, and it's a kind of a big room, and they've got these metal detectors for my bags. I put my bags in there. They check my bags. They take my bags out. They put them on a table. They open up all my bags, my backpack, my suitcase. They start taking every little thing out. They're dropping my stuff on the floor. not picking it up. They're opening up my little paper bags that I have my gifts in, all this stuff, asking me, what's this? What's this? Opening up literally every compartment in my backpack and my suitcase. And then they kind of like throw my shit back in there. I'm picking up my stuff off the ground. They give me my bags. Then I go sit down on another bench, and this guy's standing next to me, like facing me with his pistol, just standing there, like I can't leave. And then this lady comes out with my passport. I'm thinking, okay, thank God, like I'm done. I can leave. I need to catch my flight. She comes out with my passport and she asks me another series of questions for about 10 minutes. Asks me these questions. I'm still sitting there. And then she leaves with my passport, goes back to the back room for another 10, 15 minutes. And then finally, she comes back out with my passport and she's, okay, you're good. You can go. And I had to go back around and get back in line to go through the border. Eventually, like I missed my flight in Amman. This is the whole
You
nother
missed your
side quest.
flight? You
I
missed
missed
your
my flight in Amman. I missed my flight in Amman, and I got stuck in Amman for 24 hours, which is a whole nother side quest story too. But yeah, so that was the story of me leaving. So for anybody who wants to go, I don't know. People have asked me, like, should I leave from Tel Aviv? Should I leave from Amman? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if any part is better. You're probably going to get questioned and fucking interrogated anywhere you go.
Man. All right, we're gonna do another episode together. We have to. We have to get into a bunch more stuff. Overall, though, I will say, man, this has been eye-opening for me, and I know it's going to be eye-opening for anyone that watches it. All right, everybody. I hope you appreciated the raw authenticity of this. Stay on the line, Caleb. We're gonna have a part 2 to this.
This episode was brought to you by the new book, Deep Shallow Dive Into You, available now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble in hardcover and paperback. Don't forget to sign up for our new mailing list on our website at deepshallowdive.com.